Thanks very much, Ben. Good morning, everyone. Lovely to see you all here, or those that I can see on the Zoom cameras. You are all most welcome to this session. I'm Jess. I've been freelancing with Volunteer Centre Greenwich for the past couple of years. My background's in project management, so I've done a lot of work out of HR teams in the commercial sector doing system redesign, and I'm now bringing that into the volunteer management space. And with me is my colleague Abdi.
Hi, I'm Abdi, and I'm responsible for doing befriending project and also supporting volunteering, where we support young people that've got a learning disability, trying to get into volunteering. And my other background is youth working, where I lead a small charity supporting young people through youth violence and education attainment.
Cool. Thanks, Abdi. So, unfortunately, going to be hearing a fair bit from me for a bulk of the session, but Abdi's going to talk a wee bit about his experience of one of the tools that we've been using at the Volunteer Centre shortly. Just a bit about us at the Volunteer Centre. We're a pretty small charity. We've got about 8 staff. A number of those are part-time. As you would expect with any volunteer centre, we do all the usual brokerage stuff, connecting up with small charities in our community in Greenwich. I guess what separates us, I suppose, from some of the other volunteer centres that you might have experience with is at any one time you would expect to see us running at least 2 to 3 supported volunteering projects. So these are really about, as Abdi's just explained, helping some of the people in our community who are furthest away from being able to access volunteering, moving them a wee bit closer to that point. And so that's really what gives us quite a helpful insight into this. We work with people with significant barriers and significant struggles in accessing volunteering. But like most of you, we are run to the bone, and all of the money that we get largely goes into operational frontline delivery. So back in 2023, sort of end of 23, start of 24, we were very fortunate to have an opportunity to step back and kind of look at the bigger picture around this barriers sort of piece and understand a wee bit more about what was going on and do a deep dive. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. Um, the main message, if this works, the main message I want to get across really is that change, like anything, is a journey. Cardiff Castle. I was at Cardiff Castle on the weekend, um, and I'm using this slide really to highlight, and I'm clutching at straws on this analogy. I appreciate, but with any change process, it starts with one step and we have to make a start somewhere. So, like the four of
On
us
top of Michelle's cupboard.
walking up to the top of Cardiff Castle on the weekend, the kids were moaning and whinging. We had a lot of moaning and whinging going on, and you're going to find there's a lot of dissenters in any kind of change process. It's not easy, it's not straightforward, it's often a bit of a slog, but we do need to make a start and take the first step. So what we're going to talk about today, we've got about 45 odd minutes in the session today. We'll talk a bit about our research, what we found. That's our report there, which all of the information that Abdi and I are going to talk about today, you will find this step-by-step guide to how we widened access at volunteering. And that's a super easy kind of ebook that you hopefully we can pin that in the chat. Thank you, Ben. And you can find that on our website. We're going to have a good 10 minutes after we do our talk about the research to dig into any questions that you've had. So feel free to pop them in the chat as we go, and we'll scoop them up and we'll have a good kind of chance to answer any queries that you've got. And then we're going to spend the last sort of 15, 20 minutes using one of the design thinking tools that I learned about during this research called personas. And we're going to break into small breakout rooms, maybe 6 to 8 of us in a room, and we're going to use a persona. We're going to meet Sarah, and you'll find out a wee bit more about Sarah as we go. And then hopefully by the end of the session, you will come out with an action that you can take away. I want this to be super practical for you and relevant to your context and your situation. And hopefully we can come out with that at the end. Any questions before we crack on? Uh, no. Super. Cool. So if I take everyone back to sort of the end of 2023, start of 2024, and this is really where I was running a supported volunteering project at VCG, and we saw a lot of people in our community who were signing up on our platform. So the figures there, we have around 50 to 100 people sign up on our brokerage platform, which happens to be Simply Connect, in any given month. And those figures sort of hold true still to this day. So lots and lots of people signing up. But we weren't seeing those people at our front door. We weren't seeing those people fill in application forms. We weren't seeing those people contact us for a chat. We weren't seeing them progress into an actual volunteer role. And I think it's worth really sort of pausing on this point. I was speaking to Nicola a couple of weeks ago. Nicola's responsible for rolling out the new NHS volunteering platform that's recently gone live. And she was telling me they've got about 10,000 people signing up on the NHS platform every single month. So there's a lot of appetite in our community for volunteering, and I hopefully you've seen that. But what happens and what we see a lot of in Greenwich is that people are interested, they're registering on platforms, but they're not actually then going through to sign up with us. So back in October 2024, we ran our usual recruitment process. This is before we did this research and made any changes. And we had 10 people on a signposting role that we were recruiting for come forward and say that they were really keen to get involved with Volunteer Centre Greenwich, but not one person filled in an application form. So that was really the sort of starting point for the team to think about how we do these things differently. And I've very specifically used the term hidden volunteers because that is what, I think we've got a huge community of hidden volunteers in any particular part of the country that we really need to start listening to and sort of thinking about what gets in the way. But before we go into our research, I'd like us to think as a group about the sorts of things that you think are stopping people from actually filling in the application form or turning up for the interview or getting in touch with some questions. So if you can just take now, hopefully you're all familiar with Mentimeter. If you can scan that QR code on the right-hand side of the slide and start putting down why you think people in your community who might want to volunteer, so they've signed up on the platforms, brokerage platforms, but they're not actually making it happen. If we can just spend a few moments to get your thoughts on that, please. And hopefully, if I've managed to embed this properly, we'll see some data coming through. So the ones that have popped up on the screen, transport, time, money, cost, were all things that we also, when we started this research sort of back end of 23, we also thought that's probably what's stopping people from actually making volunteering happen. Anxiousness was something that we didn't really think a lot about, but you're absolutely right. That's you've read my research. Hey, yeah, that's something that we're going to talk about in a moment. So that was a real definite issue, was this sort of worry and concern about could I do it? And we're going to explore that in a moment.
So some of the comments didn't sink in, Jess.
Yeah. I knew you would have so many more ideas than that. Just needed to refresh the slide. Thanks, Abdi. Uh, yeah. So the big ones coming through, time, cost, transport. That's exactly where we were at when we were thinking about this to begin with. Um, but it turns out that's really not what the issue was at all. Um, so we had some ideas, just like you, but we didn't really know. And we didn't, we thought about doing the usual survey stuff and going out and asking people. But we were very, very fortunate at the time. This fantastic charity called CAST was scouting around for 30 charities across England to support them doing a 6-month user-centered design project with Deloitte consultants and helping us to dig deep into these issues using design thinking tools. So that's what we did. The main principle, I'm not going to go into user-centered design. You'll find out a bit about that in the report. But the main principle with user-centered design is listening and listening really, really hard. So the 3 phases that you go through in any design project, discover, design, and deliver. Each of those phases underneath them is a tool or sort of an ethos around really listening quite deeply to what people in our community are saying. So in the discover phase, we went out and we spoke to people one-to-one. We ran workshops. We sort of did a whole kind of user journey map, looked at pain points, sort of motivations, needs, desires, etc., all around the volunteer recruitment journey and got information. But it was really only by using a blank sheet of paper and putting all of my assumptions to one side about what I thought the issues were in our community were we really able to go deep. And it was really hard. I actually found that very difficult to do, sort of constantly coming back to that blank sheet of paper. In the design phase, we're really going out to our community and asking them to come up with the answers. And you'll see this in a moment with the quotes on the slide. And then we ask how might we questions, which you're going to experience in the workshop that we do at the end. And then the key thing is that we just get going on this. We just take an idea and we run with it. And Abdi will be able to tell you some of the ideas that we had at the start of this process didn't work. So we ran a trial. No one turned up for the trial, right? So, this stuff, it doesn't always work, but it's the feedback loop that's really, really important. And using that kind of mapping idea that we talk about in Vision for Volunteering, really, really important in terms of gathering feedback. So what did I find? So the big thing, and I really wasn't expecting this at all, but the biggest thing that came out from almost everyone I spoke to in that discover phase is that they had actually had some experience of volunteering. So bearing in mind that we were largely looking at people with lived experience of poor mental health. These were the people that we saw struggling the most in our community to access volunteering. Almost all of them told me that they had had some sort of experience volunteering and it had not gone well. I had one woman who was she was in tears through the interview. This was 2 years on from her having had a really rough experience. Due to her health, she wasn't able to kind of carry on the role. And the way that she was treated in that role had really, really had a lasting impact. And I had a number of stories like this. So people were hurt. They'd really been hurt by volunteering in the past. So understandably, people are coming to this. It's amazing. They haven't sort of chucked volunteering out the window and said, I'm never going to do that again. They were willing to give volunteering another go, but they were very, very wary and cautious about the type of charity that they wanted to get involved in. And then that thing that came up in the word cloud around, low confidence, low self-esteem, anxiousness about it. I'm not sure I can do it. That was the other core theme. In an ideal world, I'd have the people that were involved in the research with me here in the room, but that's not possible. So these are 3 direct quotes that really emphasize the 3 core themes that came out of the research. So these are the 3 questions that people I spoke to were asking themselves before they went anywhere near applying to a charity. Is this charity safe? Is this charity a place for me? And is this charity easy to get into? I'm not going to read out the quotes. I'm just going to give you a minute to read those for yourselves. these were really powerful quotes. And hopefully you can see from reading them that people themselves have the answers. Um, so the comments around I need to know the specifics. Don't just sort of talk to me in a role profile about the kind of things that I'll be expected to do. I want to know what training is there, what support is there, who's my volunteer manager, how often will I be talking to my volunteer manager. So by talking to people, people are already starting to give us some of the answers to the barriers that they're experiencing. So this is what we did, and Abdi's going to talk in a bit more detail about one of the things that we did. Um, the first thing was we threw up in our doors. So instead of saying to people that they needed to fill in an application form, we said, "Come and have a chat to us." Um, the second thing we did, and you will find this video on our website, is we made a video. Super, super simple. We just literally had our phone, and I got another volunteer to help me, and we just went around interviewing some of our staff and getting them to talk in detail about what it was really like to volunteer with VCG. We have around 60 volunteers that we support at the charity. And then the third thing we did was really watch our
Right. Yeah.
language and sort of rework some of our adverts to make them a bit more inclusive and welcoming to people. But enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Abdi, and he's going to tell you about the thing that's had the biggest impact for us.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to, get a background in terms of has anybody here supported or uh, supported volunteers? How many volunteers have you supported in your capacity? If anyone can write that down in their chats through your projects or whether your organization was supporting volunteers. 200 volunteers, over 408. Wow, that's a lot. 25. I like the 25s. Well, I started from supporting 10 volunteers to over 60 volunteers when I first started at this role. And one of the things we was finding hard was trying to get volunteers to engage, volunteers come to the office. And one major thing we did was we get their application form, we call them on the telephone, and that's it. Do all the admin from from the computer, but we don't have a face-to-face connection with people. So, as Jess mentioned, one thing we changed was we invited the people that are coming into the volunteer workshop. So we did a drop-in session where we invited all the volunteers and had a coffee and biscuits and tea and really connect with them face to face and tell them about the project, what it entails, what they're going to be doing, and everything. And this really has changed major in terms of getting our volunteers to stick with us. Now they're connecting with the person who's dealing with them. As a project lead, I wanted to know who the volunteers are, what I'm capable of doing, what support I'm giving them, and all sorts. So this small change that seeing them before they apply, after they have applied, and bringing them to the office, showing them around, has made a significant change. So we went from 20 volunteers to 60 volunteers on the befriending project, and also as other barriers were with the other volunteers that were anxious and um, another project that I run is the supporting volunteers, adults that have got learning disabilities, already have barriers in terms of entering volunteers. So again, having to meet them, giving them a drop-in session, and this research that Jess done kind of supported us, and it worked. It's kind of supported our organization now into how we see volunteers and how we kind of support their role. So I'm hoping to hit probably 100 volunteers by the end of the year. So that's my aim. And yeah, so going back to you, Jess.
Super. Thanks, Abdi. So yeah, it's had a massive impact for us. We now get around 70% of the people that turn up to these coffee mornings that Abdi's describing start volunteering with us. They actually walk through the door and start volunteering with us. So that's all we wanted to share. It's sort of coming up for 10 past 10. So I want to provide a good kind of sort of 5 to 10 minutes for fielding any questions. Feel free to pop them in the chat. I've actually now managed to get the chat up on the screen. Um, so feel free to put them in the chat or unmute yourself and ask away. Anything that you might want to ask us about what we've been doing and or the process of going out and speaking to people.
Jess, I have a question.
Hi,
Hi,
Sylvia.
yeah. I work for V&A East, a new site in Hackney Wick. We're opening another museum in April. But my question was because I'm fairly new to V&A East, and it's the first organisation I've worked for in volunteering where they don't really have a problem with recruitment. Like if we put something through our mailing list, it gets filled up pretty quickly. But kind of the struggle I have is I want to make the opportunity inclusive and invite people who might be a bit more cautious in the door and kind of reserve spaces for them. Um, and I was wondering if you'd any ideas or tips on how to do that.
Mm,
Um, because
mm,
if it's on the mailing list, it goes within 5 hours or so.
mm.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, good question. I mean, that's, that this is sort of our role, right? Like as a volunteer centre, as an infrastructure organisation, we want to reach and support the most marginalised in our community and support them into volunteering. So everything that we do at VCG is all around thinking about how we do that. The drop-ins are by far and away the most helpful way of us doing that. We have partnerships with different disability charities across Greenwich. I'm actually about to kick off a project. I do a lot of work with Community Southwark, where we're going out and we're sort of working out how we support people at source. So going into disability charities, into different spaces and working with people in those actual spaces to try and unpick what some of those issues are and build relationships from source. So I think it's really, really important to sort of think about how we can go out to people rather than expecting people to come to us. Um, I see Adam's got his hand up. Adam, and then I see there's a few questions coming through in the chat that I'll come back to. And Abdi, feel free to chip in too.
Yeah, all
Thank
right.
you, Jess. Thank you, Abdi, for that really, really interesting presentation. Yeah, I'm Adam from National Trust. Well, firstly, I think I completely agree that front loading admin in terms of the volunteering experience when it comes to recruitment engagement just feels like the wrong approach. And I know there are very good reasons why many organisations, including my own, do that. But your approach is really just really person centered. I guess my question was about sort of linked to the previous question was I did you do any sort of data analysis on any sort of with all of those people as to the particular reasons why they were able to come to a coffee morning and actually then continue their journey? You've got some quotes there. I'm just wondering, if you engaged a good number of people, because this feels like something really powerful, doesn't it, in terms of being able to talk about the power of person-centered connections at the start of a journey. So I'm just wondering if you did any, individual evaluation of those people and what those particular issues were that may have meant that they came to a coffee morning but didn't fill out form.
Mm. Great question, Adam.
Yeah,
If I had some more money, I'd love to do that. Yeah.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
Abdi, I don't know if the team has sort of kept that
so
data informally or whether you talk about.
to be honest, we keep it on forms, whether they're self-referral or that they come. But one of the things that really made them happy is that face-to-face interaction with us and knowing that we care that they're going to be volunteering. And just by running a coffee morning and giving them biscuits and tea and that warmth was it's a small thing for us, but it's a big thing for them as well. And it kind of got their barriers off their back as well. And it just saw the people that would be managing them, even regardless of whether they had a disability or they didn't have a disability. They just had that feeling that we were very supportive, and they did stay. Some of the people that we signed from the coffee morning stayed with us, and some of them exactly knew that this wasn't for them as well. So we didn't want to waste any of our admin time, or their time as well. They quickly said, "Yep, this is not for me," and they got it. Because sometimes when you see application and what's written on it, it sounds fancy, it sounds good, but really and truly, it's the gory details that they're missing, and that's where the human connection comes into. So statistically, we do keep the ones that are come to our coffee mornings uh, in a form paper. So yeah, so you could say 30% stay with us, and the other 70% got what they needed and said, no, this is not for me. And I'll take that actually. That 80% is excellent rather than 2%. And rather than me just, emailing them back and forth and contacting them and all that.
Super. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, Abdi. We just in the interest of time, I'll move on. But just one thing I picked up in the chat. I think, going back to my point at the start around change is hard. I think one of the most helpful things with the approach we've used is we've just gone out and we've tried stuff. So we've just got our staff involved in trying different ideas. And it's really been through that, had we gone in with a sort of business case and a kind of theoretical kind of presentation with lots of stats and data, people would still be skeptical. It was really because our volunteer managers were meeting people face to face, eyeballing them, having these conversations. They could feel the impact of the one-to-one stuff that was happening. I cannot emphasize that enough sort of through this process. Cool. Okay, we are going to, sorry, missed the question sites. So why am I introducing a persona? Some of you may have heard of personas before. So they're a really, really helpful way of helping us to sort of go deep on really an individual's kind of needs, motivations, value systems, sort of pain points, etc. When they're trying to engage with, a product, as the Deloitte consultant would describe, or with a service or engaging in volunteering. And you're about to meet Sarah. Sarah is not a real person. Sarah is a composite of the sort of people that I was meeting through the research I did. I also signpost every week in Southwark, and Sarah is quite a common person that I come across in the work that I do. It really enables us to step outside of our own kind of lens and see the world from someone else's perspective. But it's got limitations. It's just one person. So, we can't use this as sort of a template for kind of changing our entire process. So, as I said, Sarah's story is common among the people that we see at the volunteer centre. We're about to go into a breakout room. I think Ben will tell me if it's not true, but I think we can hang on to 10 minutes in those breakout rooms. And I'd really like you, once you read Sarah's story, to just come together and have a think about these two questions. And if you can just take a quick snapshot with your phone of these two questions, because I don't think we're going to be able to pin them in the chat in the breakout room. The first question is, how might you reassure Sarah that your charity is warm, welcoming, and supportive? And the second question is, how might you reassure Sarah that she's got valuable skills that would suit your charity and would encourage her to apply? And then at the end of that 10 minutes, we're going to come back and use another Mentimeter. Hopefully it's going to work. I would ask each of you to come up with one thing that you're going to take away from this exercise. So Ben, if we can...
And on the chat's questions, we'll answer it afterwards. See Jen, she put a good question on the chat, but we'll come back to it after Sarah.
Yeah. if we've got time. I think we're
Yeah.
running to a tight ship.
Yeah,
So here's Sarah.
we're not doing too clever time at the minute. I'm just about to open the breakout rooms though, so everyone will get pulled into those, and yeah, we'll do about a 10-minute timer for you on that. So those
If
rooms are now opening.
just to say, before you click on your breakout room, please take a moment to read the story on the screen. We will also put this link in the main chat, but please, before you click on that breakout room, just take a
Yeah.
moment.
I've put the Google Doc link in the chat as well, Jess. So, and I should be able to broadcast that to the rooms as well.
They
But
got
I'll
training
open
and
the room
stuff.
now.
Great. So welcome back, everyone. I hope, apologies. I'm not sure I sort of hung on that sort of Sarah profile slide here for long enough. So hopefully everyone managed to access that Google Doc and get a feel for Sarah, and some of the challenges that Sarah has in accessing and thinking about volunteering. And hopefully those two questions, the how might we questions, were really useful in terms of just helping you to reframe this from Sarah's perspective and just thinking about your own charity and the sorts of stuff that you might start to think about that might be posing problems or creating additional barriers for Sarah. So I just want us to we've just got a couple of minutes before we wrap up. I just want us to take a moment to put in this Mentimeter how the things that you have come up with to help Sarah feel welcomed and reassured into your charity. So I'd just love to hear your ideas and what you've come out with. So again, if you can click that QR code on the right-hand side, and hopefully we can get some bits and pieces coming up. Yeah, chats with current volunteers, really powerful. Flexibility, that is, really one of the main purposes for our drop-ins is we can really kind of find out what people are worried about in accessing volunteering. So if I think about one example, we had someone come in who wanted to be a mentor. Our mentor training takes around 5 weeks, and there's quite a heavy written component to that. And this individual wasn't feeling particularly confident about his writing abilities. But we could, through that conversation at the drop-in, we could reassure him about how we would adapt the role. So flexibility, thinking about the sorts of things that Sarah might need, around the childcare piece, perhaps. Really, really important. I'm just going to fast forward on again and come back because I'm sure there's loads more. Brilliant. Great. So I'll let you all just take a moment to read what the groups come up with. So it's always hard in these sort of sessions, ideally we'd kind of have lovely, rich conversations around this and we'd hear about what we're all doing. I'm sure some of you are doing a lot of this stuff already, giving Sarah some control. Fantastic. In the presentation yesterday, I was in the University of York and the Ripper Museum one. They were talking about that wellbeing plan, having buddies at the outset, training, all of this stuff that we can do really to help Sarah kind of know that she will be supported. I think that was one of the biggest things that came out through a lot of the conversations was there was just such a kind of sense of low self-esteem. A lot of the people that I spoke to had been out of work for at least a couple of years, and they just didn't think that they would have anything within their sort of skill set that would be helpful for the charity. And it's through this conversation that we can start to pull some of that stuff out. So hopefully that's been really helpful for people. Hopefully you've all got something that you can take away and put into practice in your own context and your own charity. As I mentioned at the start, you can find out all about the evidence that we've gathered over the couple of years in this step-by-step guide. It references the original research that we've done, and then the 3 things that we are now kind of going out talking to charities across London and more broader nationally about sort of trying to put in place to mix up the way in which we can connect and build a relationship with volunteers who are furthest away from volunteering in our community. If you want to follow me, I do lots of sharing of bits and pieces on LinkedIn. I've just put a whole bunch of stuff up around some work I've been doing with people seeking asylum. So that's the space that I work in. But over to you. I think, Ben, do we have we still have a couple of minutes if anyone's got any questions.
I was just going to say, Jess, yeah, you've got probably a good maybe up to 5 minutes if you wanted to just answer anything. I know there was a lot of stuff in the chat, so yeah, whichever approach you'd like to take.
Super. Abdi, I don't know, is there anything kind of coming out of the chat that you think we should talk to?
I think there was a question about how can you encourage other members of staff or time, and it really comes down to culture of the organization. I mean, if they want to support individuals to their volunteering, you have to keep pressing on and letting know those that are at the top that I want to do this. I want to support more people in different way. I want to be accessible and all that. Just kind of keep pushing on. There's always barriers that, with time and finance and all that, but just do your bit. 10% of you, you could change the CEO or the manager above you.
Yeah. Yes, we faced a fairly kind of stiff brick wall of resistance when we first started doing this work within our own charity. It's not easy. It's not easy, to sort of wrap our head around some of this stuff. And I think, the main thing here is that we just need to make a start. We need to do something and learn from it and talk to people, get feedback, and just keep, in the words of design theory, iterating. We just keep kind of, keep trying new and different things.